Isn't it strange that a gift could be an enemy? Isn't it?
Happened.
Okay.
I'm Jake!
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, and with us today we have Dr. Dan Hummer. We're going to do a throwback from 1999, Incubus's third album, Make Yourself. There's a lot of Incubus fans out there, and we're likely to piss some of them off because, I mean, you either Make Yourself is kind of Incubus's big sellout album as far as their whole funk, fungus among us, science thing that they had going on. They completely shifted into mainstream.
To tell you the truth, very similar shift to what Transatlanticism, what we just reviewed before.
Well,
this,
and I'm not even sure. Did they jump record labels in between?
I don't know.
I wonder.
Sure.
That's something that we should go
Very
look up.
possible,
If you
yeah.
guys know, leave us a comment. But you know, this is a big change for them in sound. And Tom and I were and Dan were talking right before we flipped on the camera that this album really set up kind of, you know, it did come out in '99, but this set up music for the early 2000s as far as rock music goes. This is a very, very solid alternative rock album that I know shaped all three of us musically. But Tom and Dan, what do you guys think?
You wanna
Tom,
go?
you go ahead.
Well, I am very biased here because this album did come along at a time where it was very different than a lot of the stuff on the mainstream, and this really did get them a lot of mainstream attention. Yet at the same time,
They were forming mainstream.
Yes, but it was very. Generally, Incubus isn't much loved by critics. They're just not, because they're kind of. I mean, they started out as this kind of hard to, slightly inaccessible, hard to digest. Kind of thrash funk band. Brandon Boyd had the long dreadlocks and he was jumping around, you know, kind of rap rocking a little bit. And this is really where they did start to sell out. They started to get a more mainstream audience, but they still maintain some of those elements from their early days. At the same time, though, they show here that they can incorporate some different things. They can incorporate these funkier grooves into this kind of clean, delayed out guitar lead line thing that Mike Eisinger does a lot of the time in like the verses of the songs. But the thing is, I feel like sometimes they don't do it quite enough. They have these things that set them apart, especially with the DJ incorporated into it, which he does a great job on this album. He really adds a lot to a lot of places, and since this album, I feel like he's really been downplayed. He's really kind of taken a step back, which is a shame because he does a great job here. But, I mean, for the things that they do with the kind of math rock odd time signatures in, like, the title track and track 9, Clean, they show they can do these things. They show they can do these kind of cool, groovy, stuff with the DJ, like I was saying, the kind of electronic stuff and those jam outs. But for showing they can do that, there's still an awful lot of just kind of rock songs. Like, here's a rock song. And that doesn't mean they're not good. They're well-written songs, and honestly, a few of these are even some of my favorites. But, like, the first 3 tracks, Privilege, Consequence, Nowhere Fast, then When It Comes, Stellar, those are good songs, but they're just kind of like, here's a song. Yep. And I wish that they would have mixed it up even a little more and used some of the things in those tracks that they do on the other songs that make them so interesting.
Well, and you can do verse, chorus formats and do generic. It's how you set it up in an album that really will sell it on the album listen. My main issue with stuff like that, when artists do that, is that it gets boring hearing it over and over and over again. And Make Yourself, I think Incubus does a very good job of separating that because they do, as Tom said, show some depth. But at the same time, I kind of feel like there's, in all of Incubus's music up until this point, they've shown this general immaturity. Mike Eisinger is a great songwriter and a brilliant guitarist, and how he puts some of these together is fantastic, but at the same time, I feel like these songs are held back by something. And I also have issues with the lyrics. I'll get into that later. I want to know what Dan's thoughts is on Make Yourself.
Yeah, so this album was really, came out at a time where my musical interests were very narrow. I was very focused on just, nice acoustic music. I didn't listen to much rock, much less alternative rock or funk, things like that. Yeah. And so this album, really more than any other album, is what got me into alternative rock and really opened up, the whole world of hard rock and alternative rock for me.
Yeah, it's quite accessible.
Yeah, so for that reason, like, it's sort of a special album for me because it sort of inducted me into a whole new genre of music. But yeah, I would agree that the songs are great. I do think it suffers from a little bit of immaturity as far as songwriting. I mean, like the verses and choruses are amazing. I think some of the transitions, I think, is what gets me. Like The Warmth is an amazing song. It's one of my top 20 or so favorite songs. But yet you can tell in there, it goes into the bridge, it's just kind of an instrumental bridge, and then it does another chorus. And you feel like they could probably do more with that. There's more that they could do. As good as the songs are, as good as the melodies are, there's more that they could do with the songwriting and the song.
And that's a great example of what I was saying. I even skipped over that song just because it has kind of a different sound to it. But at the same time, you're absolutely right. The song structure and the songwriting there, they still could have done more with.
I feel like this album almost, it gets. I think it's so good just in considering contextually when it came out. I mean, if you were to put this up to music today, I don't think that it would be nearly as acclaimed as it is, both critically and fan wise. But
set the stage for
it did. It came out in '99, and really, while a lot of this isn't anything real special, at the time it came out, it really was impactful to both fans and just music on a critical level. So I feel like that there's something to be said about Make Yourself in particular, that unfortunately Incubus's later and even more mature albums haven't really been able to highlight, just because Make Yourself came at the right time. It was the right album at the right time. I
really wish they could have taken this sound and even some of the songwriting and just had Brandon Boyd be a little more mature with it. Right. Be a little bit more of a man instead of just this kind of attitude edge that he was going for. At the same time, though, like track 8, Drive, I want to talk about that song real quick because as a single, it was a very sellout kind of boyish single. That one was really what I would say changed in the fans' eyes Brandon Boyd into this, dreadlocked, jumping around, screaming guy into kind of a pretty boy, preteen girl, love him. They all had obsessions with Brandon Boyd in 1999, let's face it. But still, I feel like that track is very well written. It's got a good melody, and as far as the album goes, I think it works. I think if you had Make Yourself and Clean right next to each other, it wouldn't work.
Absolutely.
And plus, since it's the only really kind of sappy acoustic track on there, I think it works. And there are some things like that because they don't overuse it, they do a good job. But at the same time, there's other things that I wish they would have done more of. So it's just the ratios, it seem a little off balance to me in some of the things they're doing.
I do love that song though, Drive. I think that's up there for me as far as songs.
It's a good one.
What are you guys feeling for scores on this thing?
I think I'm going to go 94. And that is a little inflated just because this album did come along at a very impressionable time to me. And because the fact that it came out 11 years ago, I mean, you think about that, I was like 10 years old. And probably that's why I liked it so much, is because it's easier to connect when you're 10 years old with this album that's slightly more immature.
Right, absolutely. But it still means something to you.
Exactly. And if it came out now, like we were saying, it wouldn't have had as much of an impact. I probably wouldn't like it as much. So I'll admit, there's a little bit of hypocrisy going on inside me right there. But
that's what bias is all about.
Yeah.
In music, really.
You gotta love the bias.
And we say this over and over again on VIMTV. If music strikes you, regardless of what these jackasses say on camera and what other reviewers are saying out there, if you like it, that's enough for you to listen to it. You do not need a critic backing your opinion. Music is about personal experience. If you experience something that you like when you listen to music, good. Now let's go find more experiences.
And if a critic can reinforce your opinion and maybe get you to see some things that you might not have noticed, which is kind of what we're trying to do, then great. Even more speed to you. But yeah, one thing I gotta mention, the last track on this album, Out From Under, is the biggest load of shit. I hate that damn song. I hate it. The lyrics come in, and it's just the most drivel crap lyrics, and it just ruins the cherry on top of your sundae? This is like someone taking a big poop on top of your sundae. It's awful. It's just horrible. Brandon Boyd has a cool kind of metal scream in there that kind of makes him seem badass and not as pretty boy as the rest of the album does. But I don't even want to listen to it. I just want to press stop after Pardon Me.
It kind of makes him sound like he had a lobotomy or something. But
it's just.
I'm going to disagree a little bit. It's definitely not by any means my favorite track on the album. Well, it's probably like in the bottom 2 or 3 tracks on the album, but I think it's okay.
Instrumentally, it's not that terrible. It's one of the more generic tracks instrumentally, but dear God, when you start a song with the line, "To resist is to piss in the wind, anyone who does will end up smelling," right there, I just want to hit stop and try to go to therapy.
Well,
and make
first of all,
myself
Brandon
get
Boyd
back.
must have some really stinky piss to write that. I mean, if you've peed before, you realize that different urine samples have different smells. So, I mean, he just must be very dehydrated or has
It just
eats
depends on the
golden
time of the
grams
day.
every morning.
Asparagus.
True, asparagus, yes.
Okay.
Dr. Dan, what'd you say?
So I'm gonna say, this album means a lot to me, but at the same time, we were talking about there are things that hold it back. There are songs that are not as strong as they could be, although there are songs that I really love. So I think I'm gonna go 84 on this one. There are some things that for me that keep it from being in the 90s, but not a whole lot.
Okay.
And I love this album, but at the same time, like, it didn't. I don't think I'm as biased towards it. It didn't influence me quite as much as it influenced you. But there's a certain. I feel like certain tracks are much stronger than other tracks. I do feel like there's some displacement. When I listen to this, I will skip over a couple tracks, including the last track. I hate it when that happens. I dock bands all the time for that. And I'm gonna do the same here. And there is some immaturity there. I feel like sometimes where there a lot of good things going, they'll jump to a kind of a crappy generic chorus, which was kind of part and parcel at the time. But still, I would have preferred something else there. Continuing some more advanced songwriting. And this is where I think the lyrics start to go bad for Incubus. That and I feel like continued through through Morning View. But that all in all, I feel like gives a good foundation to go straight 80. So straight 80 for me.
All
And
right.
I feel like that kind of is a good kind of glimpse of what Make Yourself means for people critically, and then what you guys think, which I'm interested to know what you guys would give this, because there's a lot of varied opinions out there on this album, specifically because this is a highlight change in Incubus's sound and style, and fans took it completely different ways. So what do you guys think? Tell us at www.velocitiesandmusic.com or youtube.com/velocitiesandmusic. I am Jake.
I'm Tom.
And this is Dr. Dan Hummer. He's been a great guest here on VIMTV. Together, we are moving music critique forward.